This is not a rant about the state of Darktide. This is not a rant comparing Darktide to Vermintide on launch. This is not a rant about the slow updates, questionable changes, promised features vanishing, or anything relating to that, because I don't need to beat a long dead horse. This is a rant about the wasted potential, missed opportunities, and what could have been versus what we have now. Warhammer 40k is one of the most popular franchises in the world. It's probably the most popular tabletop wargame in the world, and if you ask anyone who is knowledgeable in miniature wargames for recommendations, 40k will be one of, if not the first one to come up. The creators and owners of the IP, Games Workshop, has made millions upon millions of dollars from both of the franchises of Warhammer, with their worldwide revenue seeing a massive spike in 2021 due to the pandemic and an even larger spike in 2022. Needless to say, the Warhammer franchise is growing, and it's growing fast. During an annual financial report in 2019, Games Workshop reported that roughly 95% of their total worldwide revenue was not due to the tabletop miniatures though, but from an increase in sales of Warhammer video games. While they reported that 7% of this revenue was from mobile games, the remaining 87% all came from PC games, and CEO Kevin Roundtree said this was possible due to the massive success of not only Total War II, but also Warhammer Vermintide 2. Most of you who are watching most likely know that Vermintide 2's launch could be called anything but a success. But despite the terrible launch of Vermintide 2 and the even worse release of Winds of Magic, the game sold. And it not only sold, but it sold unbelievably well. The question is though, why did a broken and buggy game sell so well? Well, the answer is twofold. First, Warhammer fans had been wanting a good FPS experience set in a Warhammer setting for a very long time. Up until this point, the list of beloved and successful Warhammer games were predominantly turn-based strategy and RTS games, such as Mordheim and Dawn of War. Before 2018, Warhammer FPS games were heavily limited with only a small handful in existence. The well-known and beloved Space Marines, which released in 2011, and the lesser-known Fire Warrior, which released in 2003. While others did release down the line and pad this list, both of the Vermintide games offered the first truly good Warhammer FPS experience, and to this day they are still the only Warhammer Fantasy FPS games in existence. Second, regardless of how their games tend to launch, you can't deny that Fatshark are experts in combat design and artistic vision. The games they make are not only beautiful and respect the source material, but their combat systems are deeply satisfying to interact with, and both of these things keep people coming back for more even when the game itself is in a less than acceptable state. If you really think about it, this is quite the impressive feat, as Vermintide's reach isn't nearly as big as one might think. Warhammer Fantasy is vastly less popular than 40k, and the market for co-op hack-and-slash games is quite small, but despite this, the game still sold well and has always had a fiercely loyal community keeping it alive. By expanding the Tide series into the 40k universe, Fatshark gave the series the potential for colossal growth, the likes of which they had never seen before. The immense popularity of 40k would ensure that the reach of Darktide would be much farther than Vermintide could ever hope to be, and with the game created more in line with an FPS game rather than a hack-and-slash, the potential for the outreach was figuratively off the charts. This was made evident during the launch back in November when the game peaked at nearly 108,000 players, surpassing Vermintide's peak of 73,000 by over 30,000 players. But Fatshark only had one chance at this, one shot to ensure that Darktide had the best launch it could have, to hook thousands upon thousands of new players in and reach a player count Vermintide could only dream of. And they failed. Despite all of the tools they had at their disposal and the years of feedback they had from the community of Vermintide, content creator and normal player alike, they failed. And they didn't only fail, but they failed by making eerily similar mistakes that were made in Vermintide. I started as a content creator back in mid-2020 during the height of the pandemic because I was lonely and depressed. I started an outreach program for Vermintide to bring not only myself some comfort, but to bring others that same kind of comfort and hopefully give them some sense of community as death and destruction raged outside of our walls for months. Some have accused me of being in it for the money, and to that I can't help but laugh. For transparency, here is the estimated salary for a minimum wage worker in the United States for a calendar year, and here is my total revenue for all of 2022 across Twitch, YouTube, Patreon, and all other forms of income. I am here for the community and the people within it, and I always will be. In the back of every content creator's mind is the desire to expand and grow their brand and community across the internet, and I am no different. I was excited at the prospect of a Tide game in 40k, as the increased popularity would allow me to grow my community farther than Vermintide would ever allow me. I'd get to meet new people, explore shared interests, see different perspectives, and get to learn about the world just a little bit more. And while that did happen, it was only a tiny fraction of what it could have been. The unfortunate truth is that the Tide games have always been a drop in the ocean when it comes to online communities, and while it's possible to grow a community from it, you won't get nearly as far as others who start with other forms of media. The people you watch make Tide content, myself, Wetmagic, JSat, Moopshark, Newtype, Beachin, and so many more, we're all here because we love it. We love the game, we love the people, we love the interactions, and we love to engage with the game that changed our lives for the better. We're all passionate, but we're also limited, shackled by the obscurity of the media we all love, and unless we break those shackles to go searching for another way to bring about that growth, it'll never happen. Despite this, I'm not going anywhere. Because for me, content creation is so much more validating when you do it for the people rather than for the numbers. And at the end of the day, I don't know why Fat Shark failed to make Darktide successful. I don't know if it's the CEO bigwigs, Tencent, Games Workshop being restrictive, general mismanagement, or something else. Darktide will become a great game eventually, and will undoubtedly become the best 40k FPS game on the market, but the internet never forgets. And people will never forget. And while loyal players like myself will stick around and wait for the game to become great, and some will come back when it does, most people will never return. Darktide will never be as big as it could have been, and that makes me heartbroken.